Hello, everybody. Greetings. Thank you for tuning into this conversation. I am delighted to be joined by former diplomat Navdeep Suri and singer and songwriter Harpreet for this discussion. What we're going to be speaking about today is how Mr. Suri and Harpreet have come together to commemorate and remember the literary icon, the Punjabi poet and writer Nanak Singh ji, who was also Mr. Suri's grandfather. Our story goes back to one of the worst atrocities perpetrated by the British Raj, the massacre at Jallianwala Bagh. And on 13 April 2024, it was 105 years since the episode when General Dyer ordered his troops to open fire on the mass of peaceful protesters at Jallianwala Bagh. And Mr. Suri, as is written in the blurb of your translation of Khooni Vaisakhi, this was a life-changing experience for Nanak Singh, who survived the massacre unconscious and unnoticed among the hundreds of corpses. At the time of this episode, Nanak Singh was 22 years old. He went on to write a long poem called Khooni Vaisakhi, which then got banned by the British. It was rediscovered years later and then translated by you for the first time in English. And now, a century later, a musical album based on the poems of Khooni Vaisakhi is being released, and the poems have been adapted into songs and sung by Harpreet. So before we go on to discuss the musical album, I would like to start with you, Mr. Suri. Undoubtedly, this project holds immense personal significance for you, considering the fact that Nanak Singh ji was your grandfather. So before we go into the poems, take us into that moment in time, take us into the life and times, the context of a 22-year-old Nanak Singh ji, your grandfather.
Well, thanks, Eric. And this truly is a project very dear to my heart, and I'm delighted that it's finally come to fruition. My grandfather was a remarkable person. He was born in a fairly poor family in a small village in Jhelum district in what is now Pakistan. His father had a small Kiryana shop in Peshawar. And at the tender age of 9, he was asked to leave his school and come to Peshawar and help out his father in the Kiryana shop. A year later, his father dies, and this 10-year-old has to fend for himself and his family. And so really ends up getting no formal education beyond 4th grade. And that's significant considering the corpus of work that he went on to produce, a total of 59 books, 38 novels, all of that. He is in Peshawar, footloose, a bit wayward, when he comes under the influence of the priest at the local Gurudwara. And under this mentor, Gyani Bagh Singh, he decides to convert to Sikhism. He's born as Hansraj in a Hindu family. And at the age of 16, he becomes Nanak Singh. And he's a bit known for his ability to write poetry, to compose verse, to compose music. And he's part of the Kirtan Jatha in Peshawar. And with the zeal of the new convert, the first thing that he writes is this set of poems or hymns in praise of the Sikh gurus called Satguru Mahima. And it's a runaway success. And it's actually his ticket to come from Peshawar to Amritsar, where the book is being sold in thousands of copies, and it's being almost venerated as a holy scripture itself. It becomes so popular. So at around the age of 20, he moves to Amritsar. And so he is in Amritsar, at that time known as Nanak Singh Kavishar, by virtue of the fame and the popularity of those poems that he wrote in Satguru Mahima. He's very much part of the political movement that's going on. And so on that fateful day, 13th of April, 1919, he finds himself in Jallianwala Bagh along with 2 of his friends to protest against the Rowlatt Act. When the firing takes place, both his friends are killed. He is knocked unconscious in the stampede and survives to write this incredible long poem, Khooni Vaisakhi. I had already started translating some of my grandfather's works. I translated his novel Pavitr Papi in 2010. I translated at Khreaful in 2014-15. And around this time, 2018, I was thinking of what next. And my parents suggested, why don't you try Khooni Vaisakhi, his famous and lost poem, because the centenary of Jallianwala Bagh is coming up, and it would be most appropriate to do that. I had never really translated poetry in my life. And so it was really trying to take on something new, and take on with the additional responsibility that these poems, as Harpreet has so beautifully demonstrated, are meant to be sung, meant to be recited. So when you're translating poetry, you want to not only capture the original meaning and context of the poem and the emotion of the poem, but also you want to retain, if you can, the cadence. You want to retain the meter, the rhyme, and so on. So it's a double constraint under which you are working when you're trying to translate a poem like this. And so I got onto it. There were some really tough, challenging moments. And then maybe the Lord appeared or some inspiration appeared and it paved the way. But what struck me when I was translating this was two things. One was this 22-year-old who we didn't know as having much of a political past before that. His raw courage in writing a poem in which he says, General Dyer, you're a murderer. Until the end of time, you'll be called a murderer. Now, it takes guts to say that at a time when the Rowlatt Act is still in force, and people could be jailed for much less. The second thing that really struck me, and this is something that comes through at multiple points, was the way he captured the spirit of communal amity in the city of Amritsar at that point of time. You see it at multiple places. And finally, what struck me was that this 22-year-old has this sense that he has witnessed something seminal that happened. Yes, he was traumatized by it. Yes, he went quiet for many months. But when he wrote this poem, it's almost as if he knows that he's writing for posterity. And this is the sense that you get right in the beginning, in the very first invocation or prayer that he writes. And that prayer is an invocation to Guru Gobind Singh. And he's asking Guru Gobind Singh to give him the strength. And I'll just read a short excerpt from this. He says, "O Father mine with the turban plumed, I bow at thy feet, my divine Guru, Messiah of the meek, Savior of the poor, my divine Guru. Burdened with sin, this boat of ours is listing midstream, my divine Guru. Save it from going down in waters rough, guide it ashore, my divine Guru. Grant me thy cup of love and blessings, and uplift my spirits, my divine Guru. Let my pen fly across the pages to tell this tale, my divine Guru, of innocent souls laying down their lives for our nation's sake, my divine Guru. To pen a portrait of those departed ones, grant me the strength, my divine Guru. To remind my people across India, lest we forget their sacrifice, my divine Guru. To write the saga of our heroes such, your disciple is ready, my divine Guru. Do help me complete this mission of mine. Nanak Singh beseeches, O my divine Guru."
Deeply evocative. And he's writing this yet again, as we said, at the age of 22. And he's seen this moment that, as you said, has registered in his mind. This is a turning point. It is seminal. It is something that will, and whatever he writes, will be remembered. But as we know, that the moment the book came out, just a few months later, it was banned, and then it was lost. As we said, it was completely censored, and perhaps the intention was most definitely that history will forget it. But to be then rediscovered and translated, you operate on these different layers then, because you are also a writer, you are a translator, but here you are translating your grandfather's poetry from a moment that is registered worldwide, universally regarded as one of the most, vicious attempts to silence and to violently take down these peaceful protesters at Jallianwala Bagh. So, as a grandson, when you were reading these poems, how did you come to term with the sort of grief that is registered in them, and the sort of this sort of hope that perhaps comes from the invocation, because he realizes that this cannot keep on going? How was that for you?
You know, the poem itself brings out, I think, 3 or 4 different emotions. The first one is of anger, and mixed with a degree of despair and betrayal, that Punjab had sacrificed so much in the First World War for the British. We from Punjab sent 500,000 young people to the British war effort, to Palestine, to Iraq, to France and Belgium, and many of them didn't come back. And some came back with the Spanish flu and spread it around in Punjab, and you had that whole influenza epidemic in which many more were killed. And there was a clear understanding that in return for Punjab's contribution to the war effort, the British would relax on the restrictions imposed during the war through the Defense of India Act. And people would get a little bit more of self-government or Swaraj, as was being promised at that time. Instead, what they got was the Rowlatt Act. So the first thing was that the poem reflects this deep sense of betrayal. Then you have the protest, the calls for satyagraha, the hartal throughout India, including in Amritsar on the 6th of April. And then it's the way it captures the mood of the city during that first 10, 12 days of April. The sense of hope that they get when all the communities unite on Ram Navmi, when it is being celebrated on the 9th of April. The anger when some of the leaders are arrested on the 10th. And then the firing itself that happens on the 13th, right? And the aftermath of deep, profound darkness of sorrow that come through so vividly in the poems. And I think, as a grandson, not just as a translator, you take on yourself that very much additional responsibility that do you have the capacity to transmit it faithfully to the audiences? And, there's always this bit of a cliche of lost in translation. And there are some who call it the little art, because writing is the big art, and all of that is fine. But I think when you come to the emotions of that book, I personally thought that my journey as translator to convey those emotions was incomplete until we partnered with Harpreet to write the music for the for Khooni Vaisakhi. And if there was this eureka moment, it was when this Khooni Vaisakhi was launched at the India International Center on the 13th of April, 2019, to mark the centenary. And barely 2 weeks earlier, I had connected with Harpreet and said, look, I'm working on this, and can you try and compose music for this for this book? And he did. And the first time ever that it was played, a small excerpt was played, was on the 13th of April, 2019. And I think the power of the music just struck everybody, the force of that emotion. So I think for me, the reason also that this album is such a special project is because it brings out the raw emotion of the original Punjabi that so beautifully complements my own modest attempt at translation.
But, I completely agree with you. Listening to Harpreet, and, there's already been places where you have performed with Harpreet on Khooni Vaisakhi. It's always so evocative, so moving, so powerful. And 13th April 2024, we saw the release of the one of the songs from the album, which we'll come to. But Harpreet, now coming to you, you know why I find you and why I found your work always deeply fascinating is because you are both a singer and a songwriter, but you've always dealt with words and voices across time. You know, be it Kabir, be it Bulle Shah, be it
Yeah,
these
yeah.
other Bhakti Sufi saints, and there are these many voices constantly speaking to you. And here in this case, we have this voice that has yet again so many layers. We've already established the period in which it is being written, a very tumultuous time for Indian history.
Mm-hmm.
At the same time, coming from this 22-year-old boy who manages to survive this movement.
Mm.
And then we are seeing this voice, as Navdeep said, of anger, of grief, a voice that was lost, a voice that was banned, a voice that was rediscovered. And now this voice has been put into song. So how was the responsibility of that? Let's first ask you that. There's so many layers to this voice, but also how has this project personally impacted you?
For me, as you've already mentioned, that I've been composing different poets from different eras, different dialects, in fact, Hindi, dialects of Hindi and Punjabi, and around that region. But when I put Khooni Vaisakhi into music, that was very special for me because since my childhood, I've been getting to hear all these stories about Jallianwala Bagh. That was there, so deep down somewhere, uh, in all of us, especially from the Haryana and Punjab region. I'm sure it is, beyond that, but that region still, people still tell you these stories, how horrifying it was. So I was composing it as I would try and resonate with the poetry, and then I picked up a few parts from the poem and put it all together for a small 10-minute performance on the 13th of April 2019, the 100th year. So when I was performing there, and by the time I finished my performance, I felt something which was never experienced by me before that. It was like as if it was not me who was singing there. It was just those voices which were coming through me. I don't know. It was very strange, different experience, more like a spiritual experience, I would say. But that was the first time I had ever felt like that. It was very, very intense emotionally, and I could not stop my tears after that. I was not really crying, but I was just shedding tears. Like I don't know how else to explain it.
Yes.
I don't think it's easier to explain it in words.
No, absolutely. And now for the past many months, you've been working on this entire album, and you've been working very closely with Navdeep on this. So let's go on to the album now and talk a bit about how the poem has been adapted into these songs. Harpreet, if you could if you could first just name the songs, and then Navdeep, if you could go ahead and tell us the sort of sentiments that are captured in each of the songs.
So there are about 7 tracks. So the one that is released on the 13th is a long piece, and so we will start with the first one. First one is Prarthana. Sorry.
Just name, if you could just name the songs. Yes.
Okay. First one is Prarthana, and second Ram Navmi, and then Phade Jaan Di Khabar. Fourth is Jallianwala Bagh main incident. It describes the main incident of the 13th April 1919. Then Shahida Di Awaz, Shahida Walo General Dyer no certificate. And the last one is Chithiyan Dardan Diyan. And we would request Navdeep to explain the All the tracks basically. We'll start with the first one, maybe Prarthana, which you have already started the session with basically.
Yeah, so thanks, Harpreet. Eric, I have to tell you that when I think back of the first time that Harpreet performed that music, it still gives me goosebumps, and I can tell you that it wasn't just Harpreet who was crying. There wasn't a dry eye in the room that evening, and that's the power of his music. But as I said, the Khooni Vaisakhi is a remarkable document in a sense because it's contemporaneous, right? It's somebody who was there and who's given us an almost chronological account of that fateful first fortnight of April 1919. So after the invocation, it tells us a little bit of the context of the mood, the expectation of the people after the end of the First World War, what's going to happen next, and Gandhiji's call for the Hartal to protest against the Rowlatt Act. And very dramatically then, it shifts to the 9th of April, which is Ram Navmi. And this is really an exquisite poem which captures the joy of the city as it celebrates Ram Navmi. And it's really significant because in the poem, Nanak Singh talks about the way the two principal leaders of the city, Dr. Saifuddin Kitchlew, a Muslim, and Dr. Satyapal, a Hindu, walk hand in hand and are garlanded and feted throughout the city. The way Hindus and Muslims drink from the same water from the same glass and eat from the same plate. It's really the sentiment is that we are seeing something unusual of the three communities uniting against the British rule, against the Rowlatt Act. So that's the poem and the song of Ram Navmi. The next day on April 10, the British are so spooked by the show of unity that they arrest the two leaders, Dr. Saifuddin Kitchlew and Dr. Satyapal, and whisk them off to Dharamshala. At that time, it was whisk them off to an unknown destination. And as the news spreads in the city, there's consternation, there's anger, and a group of people go to deliver a petition. They want to go and deliver a petition to Miles Irving, who was the Deputy Commissioner of Amritsar at that time. And so this song is titled Fade Jaan Di Khabar, which is the news of the arrests, and the mood in the city as they gather to protest against the arrest of their leaders. And the British decide that, no, we are not going to allow them to cross the historic footbridge that links the old walled city with the civil lines area where they have to go to the deputy commissioner's office. And they stop the protesters, and there is firing, and something like 24 or 25 people are killed in the firing, many are injured, and they are taken back into the city. And there's a wave of anger throughout the city. So that's the sort of mood on the 10th of April that this song captures. It takes us forward to the 11th of April when the dead are being buried and cremated, and there are scenes of frustration in the city. And it leads us on to this decision on the 12th of April taken by people in the city that on the 13th, we shall go to Jallianwala Bagh in the evening for a protest against the Rowlatt Act. And this particular song, the Jallianwala Bagh Massacre, is an incredibly vivid, graphic account of that moment when General Dyer comes in with the troops and fires. We'll talk a little bit more about that particular song. Thereafter, you have these scenes of sorrow and anguish as parents come looking for their young kids who have died in the firing, and ladies come looking for their husbands and so on. And Nanak Singh is writing about that aftermath. It's a song called Shahidan Di Awaz, the voices of the martyrs, and it's a very mocking, sarcastic kind of poem where he's saying to his fellow Indians, "Hey, so many days have passed since that incident happened. What have you done? Have you even built a memorial for those who died? Um, uh, don't you know that while you were living comfortably in your houses, these young men could also have done the same, but they went to protest and they took the bullets in their chest." There's an urging towards the end of the poem that, look, we're all going to die one day or another. Isn't it good that you die for the sake of your country? So it's a really very powerful appeal to your sense of nation and sense of patriotism in this poem. And the next one then is General Dyer certificate, which is this poem that shows the anger of Nanak Singh towards the incident, and he accuses Dyer, saying, what accursed day brought you to Punjab? And what was your bloodthirst that made you do what you did? And if it is our blood that you wanted, well, we've given you a pool full of it to quench your thirst. Dyer, you're a murderer until the end of that time. You'll be called a murderer. And it goes on to say, tell me which holy book says that innocents should be killed in such manner, almost taking a shot at his supposed Christian beliefs.
Yes.
So it's a very powerful song that Harpreet has picked from this. And the final one, Chithiyan Daddan Diyan, and I know at a personal level, I think this is the song that I had the hardest time translating into English, because these are letters written by ordinary citizens, and they're all in 4-line verses to the British rulers, castigating them for what they did, but also lamenting that they haven't recognized the sacrifices that the Punjabis have done for the empire during the First World War, and what terrible fate that we were expecting some acknowledgement or some reward, and what we got in return is a guy like General Dyer to carry out the massacre. And he also mentions Michael O'Dwyer, who was the Lieutenant Governor of Punjab, based out of Lahore. And you know, when I was translating this, and I was looking at letters of anguish, Chithiyan Daddaniya, how do I really translate it? How do I make anguish rhyme and so on, with all the other sentiments that are being expressed in the verses that we go along? And one fine morning, the penny dropped, and I said, forget letters, forget anguish, and let's make it postcards of pain. And that was the start of my journey for translating this particular song. I know that the one that we've just released is the one about the firing on Jallianwala Bagh at Jallianwala Bagh, and I want to take just a second to maybe read out the English translation of that,
please.
To give your viewers, perhaps those who don't understand Punjabi, although Harpreet's emotions come across regardless.
Beyond language.
I don't think language is a barrier, but nevertheless, to set the context. 5:30 sharp, the clock had struck. Thousands gathered in the Bagh, my friends. Leaders came to lament the nation's woes, taking turns to speak out loud, my friends. Voiced grievance, hardship, anger, sorrow, saying no one listens to us, my friends. What can we do? What options left? Can't see any ray of light, my friends. Those words forlorn, they barely voiced, came soldiers thundering down, my friends. At Dyer's command, those Gurkha troops gathered in a formation tight, my friends. Under tyrant's orders, they opened fire straight into innocent hearts, my friends, and fire and fire and fire they did. Some thousands of bullets were shot, my friends. Like searing hail, they felled our youth, a tempest not seen before, my friends. Riddled chests and bodies slid to the ground, each one a target large, my friends. Haunting cries for help did rend the sky. Smoke rose from smoldering guns, my friends. Just a sip of water was all they sought. Valiant youth lay dying in the dust, my friends. That narrow lane to enter the Bagh, sealed off on Dyer's command, my friends. No exit, no escape, no way out was left, making Bagh a deathly trap, my friends. A fortunate few somehow survived, while most died then and there, my friends. Some ran with bullets ripping their chest, stumbling to their painful end, my friends. Others caught the bullet while running away, dropping lifeless in awkward heaps, my friends. In minutes, the Bagh, so strewn with corpses, none knew just who was who, my friends. Many of them did look like Sikhs, amid Hindus and Muslims, plenty, my friends. In prime of their youth, our brave hearts lay, gasping for one last breath, my friends. Long hair lay matted in blood and grime. In slumber deep they sleep, my friends. Says Nanak Singh, who knows their state, but God, the one and only, my friends.
It's deeply, deeply powerful and moving. And Harpreet, I would now request you to actually sing an excerpt from Jallianwala Bagh.
ठीक वक्त 5:30 ਵਜੇ ਦਾ ਸੀ ਲੋਕ ਜਮਾ ਹੋਏ ਕਈ ਹਜ਼ਾਰ ਪਿਆਰੇ ਕਹਿੰਦੇ ਜਿਉਣਾ ਸਾਦਾ ਹੋਇਆ ਔਖਾ ਕਿੱਥੇ ਜਾਇ ਕੇ ਕਰੀਏ ਪੁਕਾਰ ਪਿਆਰੇ ਕੋਈ ਸੁਝਦੀ ਨਹੀਂ ਤਦਬੀਰ ਸਾਨੂੰ ਢਾਡੇ ਹੋਏ ਹਾਂ ਅਸੀਂ ਲਾਚਾਰ ਪਿਆਰੇ ਅਜੇ ਲਫ਼ਜ਼ ਤਦਬੀਰ ਮੂੰਹ ਵਿੱਚ ਹੈ ਸੀ ਉਧਰ ਫੌਜ ਨੇ ਧੂੜ ਤੁਮਾਂ ਥੋੜੀ ਦੇਰ ਪਿੱਛੇ ਫੌਜ ਗੋਰਖੇ ਦੀ जनरल डायर ने अगा बता ਦਿੱਤੀ ਮਿੰਟਾਂ ਵਿੱਚ ਹੀ ਕਈ ਹਜ਼ਾਰ ਗੋਲੀ ਮਿੰਟਾਂ ਵਿੱਚ ਹੀ ਕਈ ਹਜ਼ਾਰ ਗੋਲੀ ਨਾ ਜ਼ਾਲਮਾਂ ਖਤਮ ਕਰਾ ਦਿੱਤੀ ਪਲ ਵਿੱਚ ਹੀ ਲੋਥਾਂ ਦੇ ਢੇਰ ਲੱਗ ਗਏ ਕੋਈ ਸਕੇ ਨਾ ਮੂਲ ਬਚਾ ਉੱਥੇ ਗਿਣਤੀ ਸਿੱਖਾਂ ਦੀ ਬਹੁਤ ਹੀ ਨਜ਼ਰ ਆਵੇ ਗਿਣਤੀ ਸਿੱਖਾਂ ਦੀ ਬਹੁਤ ਹੀ ਨਜ਼ਰ ਆਵੇ ਭਾਵੇਂ ਬਹੁਤ ਹਿੰਦੂ ਮੁਸਲਮਾਨ ਨਾਨਕ ਸਿੰਘ ਨਾ ਪੁੱਛਦਾ ਮਤ ਕੋਈ ਨਾਨਕ ਸਿੰਘ ਨਾ ਪੁੱਛਦਾ ਬਾਤ ਕੋਈ ਰਾਖਾ ਉਹਨਾਂ एक भगवान थे। Thank you.
Beautiful, beautiful.
Truly, truly. Thank you, Harpreet. Thank you, Navdeep. You know, in moments like these, as you said, that you do not know where the voices and the sentiments are coming from, but there is a universe that we sort of start speaking for. And one tends to think of in terms of, the mystical or serendipitous, because we are thinking about how when Nanak Singh was writing this, he did think he would write it for posterity. And the fact that it was lost for years, it was banned for years, and yet over a century later, here we are with his grandson who has translated the song, the poems, and Harpreet who has put them to song. The prophecy perhaps has come true, and I think it is deeply important that we remember how deeply this has been imprinted in not only the psyche of Punjab, but Indian history as a whole, the world history as a whole, and remember this tumultuous period in time. So thank you so much, Navdeep, for doing the work that you do. It is truly inspiring. Thank you, Harpreet, for always moving us with the power of your voice. As Navdeep said, that truly your voice transcends language. There are these sentiments that are coming from across time that you inhabit. So thank you for doing that.
Thank you.
And I believe everybody who tuned in to listen to this conversation is deeply looking forward to the full album release that is going to come out soon. I would urge all of you to listen to the song that Harpreet just sang in full that has already been released. And yes, thank you for tuning in. Thank you, Navdeep and Harpreet, for being a part of this conversation.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Eric.